One helpful strategy that you can use when working with word problems is the GRASS strategy. If you recall, G stands for what is given. In other words, what do I know? What do the words in the problem tell me? R stands for what is required. What do I need to know? What's missing that I need to figure out in order to solve this problem? A stands for analyze the problem. How will I figure this out? What steps will I follow, or what's my plan to get this answer? S stands for solve the problem. So you simply follow your plan and find the answer. And finally, another S, write a statement. That's where you write your answer in a sentence and remember to do any rounding that needs to be done and include any units if they apply to the problem. Today, we're looking at word problems involving percent. And you're going to see three different types of problems. The first is what is the percentage? That's where you're given the number of parts in one whole thing, the number of parts being counted, and you simply have to take that fraction and turn it into a percent. Let's look at an example. So here you can see 15 out of 25 students in our class like in-person learning better than remote learning. What percentage of students prefer in-person learning? So if we think about this as a fraction, we can think, how many students are there in the class? What is the total number of parts in the whole thing? Well, that's 25 students. And how many parts or how many students in our class like in-person learning better than remote learning? The problem tells us that's 15 students. So now we have a fraction, but the question says what percentage of students prefer in-person learning? So we need to express this fraction as a percentage. Now, if we want to try this without a calculator, we can, of course, figure out an equivalent fraction with 100 as the denominator. Luckily, these numbers are pretty friendly to work with. So we can think, 25 times what gives us 100? 25 times 4. And you know that if you multiply your denominator by 4, you also have to multiply your numerator by 4. 15 times 4 is 60. If we look at this fraction of 60 hundredths, and remember that percent means for every 100, we can very easily convert the fraction of 60 hundredths to 60%. Now we also have to remember that when we're doing word problems, it's very important for us to express our answers in sentences. So we look back to the original question. It said, what percentage of students prefer in-person learning? So we would write a sentence to answer that question. So we can say that 60% of students prefer in-person learning. So now let's look at the second type of word problem we might see. In this type of problem, you have to calculate the percent of a number. So you're given a percentage, you're given the number of parts in one whole thing, and you need to find the number of parts that we're actually counting in this problem. Now, this will make much more sense if we look at an actual example. So here's a problem. Lorta bought a new shirt and saved 40% off the regular price. If the regular price of the shirt was $20, how much did she save? So if we read this problem carefully, we can see that we need to calculate 40% of $20. Now you might remember that if we want to find a percentage ending in 0, like 20%, 30%, 40%, etc., what we can do is first calculate 10% of the number And then we can multiply by whatever factor will bring us to the total percentage that we want to find out. So here, let's plan out our steps. Step 1, we could calculate 10% of $20. And then I know 10% times 4 will give me 40%. So step 2, I can multiply by 4. So let's actually do those steps now. Step 1, calculate 10% of $20. So take $20, and I remember the 10% is the same as 1/10. So I divide by 10. 10% of $20 is $2. Step 2 tells me to multiply by 4. So I take my $2, multiply by 4, and the total is $8. So 40% of $20 is $8. So if I answer the question, how much did she save? She saved $8. All right, folks. Now let's look at the third and final type of word problem you might see involving percent. How many parts in one whole thing? So in this type of problem, you're given a percentage and you're given the number of parts being counted, but you don't know how many parts are in the whole thing. And I'll be honest with you, this is the most challenging type of word problem that you're going to see in grade 7 because you haven't done a lot of work with algebra yet. But let's look at an example. We should be able to use some mental math and some just good old logic to help us solve this, even without using algebra. So in this question, Johnny bought a meal at a restaurant and left a cash tip of $6, which was 20% of the total bill. What was the cost of his meal, not including the tip? So if we try to think about this problem in a similar way to our percent of a number problems, we could write down this information as 20% of something is $6. Now we need to find out what that something is, the total cost of his meal, not including the tip. But how can we do that? If you remember, a total cost we can think of as one whole thing. And what percent would represent one whole thing? Of course, that's 100%. So if we go back over here, we can think, okay, we know 20% is $6. And I know that 20 times 5 is 100%. So could I take that $6 and multiply it by 5 to get the total cost? Let's try it. 6 times 5 is $30. Now at this point, this is just a strategy I've tried, but I'm not totally sure if it's going to work. How could I check my work to see if this makes sense? So I'm thinking that 20% of $30 is $6. I could do some mental math and think, how do I find 20% of 30? Okay, I know I can find 10% by dividing by 10. 30 divided by 10 is 3. And then I can double that to find 20%. 3 plus 3 is 6. Well, that seems to check out. Or I could grab a calculator, of course, and I could enter into my calculator 0.2 times 30. And when you press equals, you should get 6, which confirms that we have arrived at the correct answer. Now we can't forget, we have to write our answer as a full sentence. Total cost of Johnny's meal, $30 plus the tip.